Hi, I'm Shane Kaplan, the Curriculum and Grants Director of the LEAF Project. We're here in beautiful Perry County. You'll learn a little bit about the LEAF Project throughout this workshop, but the main purpose of this workshop is to give you information about what we found when we explored barriers to the local food system in our local community. The youth of the LEAF Project helped with this. They helped us gather survey data, and they were also able to speak from their experience. And you're going to hear a little bit about that and from some of them. But also, our goal is to look at all of the data that we gathered and to begin to make some conclusions and think about other ways that we can market local food. I don't know, this is making me nervous. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for coming to our presentation. I know that you didn't have any choice since you work here, but so today the thing that we're talking about is exploring barriers to local food. And I'm really excited to talk about this. It's this year-long study that we've been doing. So the thing that we're talking about today is access to local food. And so it's important, I think, to talk about some of the history of, when we talk about local food, what that means. All of our ancestors at some point were farmers. The statistic is that in the 1800s, 90% of the population lived on farms, and if they didn't live on farms, they were getting food from things like local farmers markets. And so the question is, what happened over time? So that's not true, because today it's closer to about 1% or less than 1% of people who live on farms, and there's not quite as many people who access local food because it's harder to access. So back then, people lived on farms and they had access to that fresh food. And now in the intermediate time, things have happened are like things like globalization and, refrigeration and things like that make it so it's possible to ship food far away. But it used to be that everyone knew what it was like to eat locally. And so this wasn't really an issue. I want to talk about the farmer's dilemma. Has anyone ever heard of or read the book called The Omnivore's Dilemma? It's like slightly more controversial than it was when it came out. It's the idea of like, what is it that people should eat based on the history of what people have eaten before and the impact the things that you eat have on the planet and have on your community. And it was a really thought-provoking thing, and it got people excited about food. It's one of the things that made it so people wanted to eat local food a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, I'm talking about like the 2000s. For you all, that might seem like really long ago. Okay, so I want to talk about the farmer's dilemma. So the omnivore's dilemma is, what should people eat? The farmer's dilemma, because based on the fact that like fewer and fewer people are eating locally and farmers want to grow food to feed people, it's who do I actually feed? So we asked this question at LEAF, and I'm going to talk about why we asked this question. But we asked this question, and over the last like 3 or so years, we were trying to figure out who it was who was buying our food. And the thing that we found out, and it might not be surprising to you all if you've talked about this or thought about this idea before, is that the people who are eating local food are people who can afford it. Because sometimes it can seem expensive compared to cheaper options. Often it's people who are already in the know about these things. Often in terms of like demographics, we're talking about people who are usually white, people who are usually wealthier. And so we were like, we've been thinking about this for a few years and trying to decide how do we feel about this and how things could be different. What we decided to do is we wanted to look a little bit deeper into why people were making the choices they were, or what barriers people might have to eating local food if they weren't able to do it easily. During the workshop, we're going to be talking about the findings of all these different things that we created over the last year. So one of the main things we did is the local families, they participated in this 20-week-long focus group. So it was during the biggest part of our farm share program. They got those free farm shares, and we'll talk about that. You didn't know about this, but you're participating in this because we're going to ask you to fill out some of the same survey questions or have like a sit-down interview in the same way that some of our participants in the farm share did, because we want to know you who got that farm share during this summer, how it was for you, if it changed anything for you or your family, and surveys from community members. And the last thing is we're doing some like broader research to learn about what other programs might exist in the country, because we figure that some people are doing this really well in a way that maybe we're not, reaching people who don't usually participate, getting more people interested, and making it so like eating locally isn't just a niche thing, but something that people decisions that people can make all the time about how to eat food. So this, you don't need to know this, but the people who are watching this who aren't you, they will probably want to know what the Leaf Project is and why we decided to do this. So for those of you out there in TV land, we are the Leaf Project. And the thing that we do, this is our mission statement: cultivate youth leaders from diverse backgrounds through meaningful work in the food system. And so there's lots of parts to that, but like, for the purpose of this presentation, the thing that I would want someone to know who wasn't one of you all is that the kinds of growth that we see in the youth that work with us, and I'm not talking about like just learning skills, but like leadership development, developing, work ethic, and maybe lots of other kind of interpersonal skills. Probably the only reason that's possible is because we're doing this, hold on, let me use this laser pointer. Because we're doing this meaningful work. So the question that other people might have, based on the fact that we're a youth agricultural organization, we're doing this meaningful work, why do we want to ask this question? Why do we want to explore the issue of barriers to the food system? And so, we just looked at the mission statement. If our primary goal is for youth to do meaningful work in order to develop their own skills, if the work in the food system isn't making a difference, then it's probably not meaningful. If the only people we serve is just a small group of people in our community, and they're people who have a lot of disposable income, then we're probably not doing something super meaningful. So in order to make our work meaningful, we have to make sure that we're reaching more people than we are currently, I believe. So the other thing is that we care about the future of the food system. If you all go back to the beginning of the slideshow in your mind, can you see the picture, the three pictures that I had up before? Okay, and you can imagine the people who used to, whether they were doing subsistence farming, or they were working at the market, or they were buying all their groceries from a local market. In that time, we went from 90% of people who lived on farms, who understood what farming was about, to about less than 1%. If you think about that, it makes you wonder, hopefully, about like who's going to be doing the farming in the future, who's going to be doing the eating in the future, how are we going to be able to sustain our local communities who want to do good food work if that continues to be the trend. If fewer and fewer people are farming and fewer people know where their food is coming from, and there continues to be barriers, we worry about what's going to happen in the future. So that's why Leaf is doing this. But we're going to go over the obstacles that most people face. So probably the one that most people think of, and maybe we'll find out, but maybe a lot of people identify as the biggest issue, is affordability. Another one is, Fisher said, so access or transportation, being able to actually get to a place where you can receive that food. Nutrition education is a big one that a lot of people in public health, and also a lot of people just in general, would think, oh, the issue is if people can't access food, it's because they don't know enough. We need to educate people. Cultural relevance is a one that people overlook, but if you think about it, so if you come from a culture that doesn't know how to use a particular kind of vegetable, and you're getting that consistently, let's say in farm share, then you're not going to know what to do with it, and it's not going to be useful to you. This is the one that a lot of people don't think about, or a lot of people don't consider as like the biggest factor, which is what, Johnny? Yeah, time or convenience, I would say, is like being able to go and get the things that you want, because you would assume that it takes a lot of time to get those things. Being able to have the time to cook it. I want to talk about what the design of this study or exploration was. So there are a couple different things that we did during this year-long time period. We had a 10-family focus group who received a free 20-week diversified vegetable share. The value was about $25. They would occasionally get some other things, and we'll talk about that in a future slide. Participants agreed to give us regular feedback. In addition to that, we also have the survey that we are looking to gather qualitative or quantitative data from. Okay, so I want to tell you about the key findings before we get into the actual information. So one of the things that we found is that it was really hard to recruit families to get free produce shares. Raise your hand if that surprises you at all. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm interested. Okay. Why did it not surprise you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So even if you think that that someone's giving you food for free, you're like, well, that still means I have to cook it, or I have to pick it up, or whatever. So I'd say like probably the thing that people identified as in our interviews with people as like the thing that they resonated with the most, or the thing they got the most out of this, was that it was novel. That means that it was like there was like some fun or some adventure in it, or some excitement in getting like a box of produce. You knew it was going to be like fresh produce and good quality, but you didn't know exactly what it was going to be until like a couple days before, maybe. Some people really liked the fun of that. Most people actually said that they liked the adventure part of it. Most participants just in general appreciated all of it. So they got a typical farm share, which is a $25 value. It had greens, fruiting vegetables, rooting vegetables. And then it doesn't say it here, but we also had add-ons occasionally. So that would be dairy or eggs or bread. And that was like a farmer's choice thing. Most people found the program to be convenient. The supplemental products improve people's experience. And this is something that I think is like really interesting in terms of the people who it didn't work for, because there were some people who didn't like this program. And the people who it didn't work for were mostly people who were, I would say, like well-established cooks and consumers. They knew what they wanted, and the fact that it's kind of the opposite of this, which is like we're giving them something and they wanted to instead be able to choose everything they were going to get. And so that was a little bit surprising. This is some data from the survey that we did with people in the community. Thank you all for sending those out to people, because we got a lot more this past week. So of the people that we surveyed in that broader quantitative survey, there's a very large discrepancy between the people who want to eat locally. 85% of people said they wanted to eat locally, and people who are currently regularly doing it, 42%. Okay, so people want to eat locally, and there's some reason, there's some barrier. You know, this is all about barriers. There's some barrier, or maybe a couple that are making it so they can't. So I'm going to talk about the farm share focus group first, and then I'm going to talk about the other pieces. And you're going to see some data. It'll be a little bit more interesting than it has been so far. So this is a flyer that went out to people. You won't be able to read it from where you are, and don't try. I don't want to hurt your eyes. But basically what this is describing is what we have to offer through this farm share. It's the thing we've already talked about, this 20-week thing. It's free to people. That's as a way to get around that affordability part. Won't get around everything else, but that affordability, if that was a barrier, we can at least see some of the other things that might be an issue as people experience this and we ask them questions. So I want to tell you some of the feedback that we got from some of the people. And so it's mixed. There's some good and some not so good, but it was all helpful. And I want to tell you, in the context of the things you're about to see, there's kind of 4 things that we were paying attention to. One was, what was their experience with this specific program? And then, like both, what were the good things and what were the bad things? What are their normal barriers to eating locally? And then lastly, I would say, if you were going to design a better system than what we provided, what would it be like? So some of these are going to be really focused on what this farm share specifically did. So I want to talk about that. I chose this quote for a specific reason. There are a lot of good things in here that tell us a lot about what was working for the participants in this program. There was information in this quote about why it was so exciting to get it, that all the fresh produce was in one place. That tells me that this person really enjoyed the convenience, that they looked forward to seeing what they were going to get. There was an element of excitement, and you'll see a lot of echoes of that throughout the rest of the data. In this section, as we talk about what people were getting in their shares and how they were reacting to them, it's qualitative data, which means it was based on a lot of interviews. I did at some point start to look at all the mentions that people made about certain factors that mattered to them, and I started to get some numbers on that. But mostly what I was doing was just talking to people and having these long conversations, which ended up being very interesting and very rich. I wanted to first, though, talk about the age of the participants. So it's kind of like a pretty good split. I would say this is a little bit different than the people who usually participate in our farm share, because usually, and what this is saying is, this is the ages of people. Okay, so people that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or over 55 is what we were surveying. And what we found is that the largest group were in their 30s and 40s, but we actually had a good amount of people that were in their 20s and a good amount of people over 55 of the 10 families, right? So to me, that's a little bit slightly more diverse than what we usually get in our regular farm share. In terms of the participants, again, overwhelmingly white, and it was a little bit more diverse than probably our normal. Okay, I like to show you different ways to digest the data. This is one. Does anyone know what this is? What is this called? Yes, that's right. It's called a word cloud. Okay, so if you're evaluating qualitative data, it's helpful because if you had long conversations with people and you wrote down everything they said, it takes all the words and then it like makes the ones that are in purple are the ones that were used the most in my interviews with people. You can see some of the themes that I was talking about in terms of novelty. So like the fact that people were using the word exciting a lot, the fact that people were using the word fun a lot. I don't think adventure was on here. That was the word I used, but like that's what it seemed like people were into. They liked the idea of getting this new thing. They thought a lot of people thought the produce was like high quality. You can see some examples of that there. Some of the ones in blue, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of what people really felt about this. I think like forward and looked, the reason they're the same size is because they're two words, but it was like a phrase people were used a lot, which is like I looked forward to it. I looked forward to it. People were excited about it generally. And there's some people who didn't work for it, and we'll talk about that. So again, I would say like some learnings is that novelty and excitement and adventure was a big part of it. Here's another quote from someone. I felt like it was exciting because you didn't know what would be in it. Something to look forward to each week. For me personally, it saved on my grocery bill. For my kids, my 8-year-old looked forward to unpacking it and learning what it was. So it's that like idea that I'm not sure what it is. Like, let's figure it out. Let's get excited about it. Let's learn how to cook with it.
I agree. We usually got it. I would text my husband and we'd sort of gear dinner around what we got. So it was a nice little surprise each week.
I liked receiving the peppers.
Okay.
Those were always like you can put them with dinner, you can put them with lunch. They're just kind of universal. We got green beans.
Greens.
We
I
just
think
baked.
we ate those on the side.
Probably another big factor in things that people liked was convenience. And here's another quote about that. The best part was the convenience. A set time each week to get the produce from a pickup point, help with meal planning and knowing what to make for the week, and knowing we were eating something local gave another important bit of satisfaction too. So those are some of the things that people were saying. So what are the top 3 things there? Yeah. Right. So the fact that it was easy for some particular people, the fact that it felt like adventure, the fact that it was convenient were some of the factors that people like the most. And then, there's other ones, but like I think ones that I would note, other ones besides that is like people thought there was good variety. People really liked the newsletters and the recipes that they got. It helped them to cook. The newsletter over there, and also just in general, like the help with cooking, the quality of the produce, some people noted, and the variety. So there were a lot of things that people were really excited about with the way this program worked. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the issues with the program. So some of the complaints that people had are ways that it didn't work for people. So this is someone who really it didn't work for her. She was interested in the program because she heard, I think maybe Heidi or maybe Ricky speaking about this program and wanted to be involved and wanted to just do it as an experiment. And this person said it did force them to eat things they don't usually eat, like kale and chard, and they had to figure it out. But basically, they wouldn't have chosen certain things if they could have. And the fact that they got those things repeatedly. Think about how many times we sent out chard and kale over the course of the 20 weeks. So if you were getting that repeatedly and you didn't like it, you would see it as wasteful. I think I don't want to use this. I want to give it to someone else, or like I wish I wasn't paying for this because I don't want to use it. In terms of like what the people said, you'll notice the numbers are fewer, and that's because like there were fewer mentions of some of these things that people didn't like, but the things they did like I think are helpful for us to note. So it's that the thing I was just talking about is the idea that it's wasteful, the idea that people are getting things that sometimes they don't want, and those are things that they don't end up using. And the next one is like, kind of related, unpredictable. If they knew exactly what they were going to get, they might make different choices. So this one that trails off, it says too many weird vegetables. So they're all kind of related to the same thing, which is like there's certain things that people didn't want, but they were getting them anyway. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is the people in this study. We wanted to ask them, beyond just the program we were doing, what do they think are the biggest barriers to eating locally? And so they identified things that you would expect, which is high cost. But they also identified that eating locally can be inconvenient, because if you have a grocery store you go to or a market you go to or whatever, you know where you're getting your food. That's easy for you. You can build it into your schedule. It depends on your situation whether or not the local food system feels convenient, because the local food system generally for our region consists of farm share programs like ours, farmers markets, or food hubs. The biggest things, the biggest factors were why this group of people that we interviewed, why they don't eat locally, is high cost, that it's inconvenient for them, transportation issues, or just generally access. Okay, and then the last thing that we wanted to figure out is if they could design a better way to eat local food, what would it be besides the farm share or a farm share? What might that be? So this person said that figuring out what people like to eat and like basically letting them choose the things that they want would be a better system. I mean, we probably all know that. Like even farmers who created the like farm share programs probably know that. But the reason a farm share program was created is because it benefits the farmer. The farmer, it's a lot easier for the farmer than giving everyone their choice. Think about all the choices, different choices people would make in our farm share and how complicated that would make it for us to pack it out. So that's why that doesn't happen. But maybe there's a better system. Maybe there's a way to get more people to eat that's not a farm share or some other system. So when we asked people their suggestions to make a better system, whether farm share or something else, this is what they said. The top thing that people said was being able to make their own choices about what they were going to eat. So if it was like a menu of options they could choose from, they choose only those vegetables. That was the thing that people wanted the most. I think that's surprising because they had identified in the slide before, they identified cost as the biggest barrier, but then at the same time, they're saying the thing they actually want is to be able to make choices. Maybe they would be able to spend more money or be willing to spend more money if they had the ability to choose everything they wanted.
If I was given like kind of a list, personally I like the kind of randomness of what's in the box, like stuff like that.
And I think I would like to pick from a menu, just, as we're thinking about meals that we're going to prep for the week.
That's interesting. Prepared foods. So the thing that we asked them is if you could have a certain amount of prepared food every week from us, like maybe it would come in your farm share box or maybe you would get it from somewhere else. But if a local food purveyor could give you prepared food, would you choose that? And that really, a lot of people like that because they are concerned about convenience, and that's pretty easy. Someone made your meal for you, they sourced it locally, now you're just going to eat it.
I enjoyed having the prepared foods in there in addition to the vegetables. It was just nice to have a nice mix of both of those. Yeah. And the soups were enough for probably like 2 lunches each soup. So that was nice to have that available.
Some of the other things are just about, what people actually wanted in their produce share. But this is interesting. We asked a lot of people whether they would like the produce share to come directly to their house. The group that we interviewed didn't identify that as a big issue. Maybe in part because they chose to be that's an important factor. They chose to be a part of this thing, and so they knew what it was going to be. They knew where the pickup points were, and they probably figured it was already pretty convenient for them when they signed up for it. I want to talk about the survey that you all have been sending out to people. There's 60 people who participated so far. Okay, and this is different. This is the quantitative study. So it's supposed to give us just like numbers. And what we found, first of all, measuring people's attitudes about eating local food or any barriers. So this is quantitative data, and the place that we got it was from events that we were at, from farmers markets, and then all the people that you were sending the surveys to. So this question was asking people if buying local food is a priority for them. How much do they really want to do it? So the thing that is surprising, especially as we look at the next one that looks really different than this, is most people that we talk to want to eat local food. They want to support local people. They care about that. So that last one was 85% of people wanted to eat local food. The question was, how many people eat local food regularly? I mean, occasionally is great that a lot of people do occasionally, but regularly, as in like you're really actually supporting the backbone of our food system, was only about 42%. So when you think about that, that's a large discrepancy. People want to be eating local food, but they're generally not, and there's got to be some reasons for that. So we asked these people that question too. what's the biggest obstacle for you to eat local food? And we asked them to choose something, and if they couldn't, they could choose some other and then like fill it in. So the number one issue that people identified in this situation on this quantitative study was time. Another thing that's connected to time is convenience. Time and convenience, I think, are a really big factor that we overlook. The thing that we want, if like we want to figure out like that people want this thing, the more they want it, the more bars there are on that side of the chart. Okay, I'll explain why. Because what we gave people is something called a Likert scale. You've probably seen these before, but you didn't know that that's what they were called. It's like rank this from 1 to 5. 5 being not likely. 1 being not likely, 5 being very likely. Okay, this is based on a 6-point Likert scale. If someone gave it a 6, they really agree with the statement. This is a 24-hour food store, and the way this would work is imagine like just like a little lobby somewhere that has a bunch of refrigerators, maybe glass front refrigerators, so you can see the produce and the meat and the dairy and stuff that's in there. You would have a key fob, so like it wouldn't be open to the public, it would be locked. But if you tap it with your key fob, you open the door and you go in and you get everything that you want. You don't have to ring it up because you have a subscription. You just pay every month or every week or whatever. And then that's how you would access local food. So that's the thing we were describing here. And people generally like that. If they're in the 5 or 6 range, then they like that. Can anyone do quick math? 23% plus, was it? 55. So 55% of people said that there was a program like this, they would want to participate in it. Okay, so that's one example of something that is possible. Here's another option. So this one's doorstep delivery, and this is a little bit more mixed, but this is the idea of, I don't know whether you order it or if it's like one of our farm shares, but it's coming directly to your house. Someone like gets your order and brings it to you, and you don't have to go and pick it up anywhere. We thought people would like that a lot, but it was like a little bit more mixed. It's still like, still gets, what is that, like 50, 51, almost 52%, but not quite as popular. And there were some people that had mixed feelings about this. And I remember in my conversations with people, when I was talking to the farm share people, some people didn't like it. They thought like, well, that's too inconvenient for you. I don't know if I want to pay a premium price. Like, do I have to pay more for people to do this delivery? So I think people have mixed feelings about that, but it's still generally positive.
It is pretty convenient to have it delivered.
Yeah.
I do use Instacart delivery because I work full time. And so if you knew the box was being delivered, it would be really convenient and nice.
This is a customizable box. So it would be like what we're doing now, but instead of we pick everything each week, we maybe give people a menu and we choose for them. We put it in their box, and then they would pick it up or come to them, however we do it. And that was something that people liked. So that's like 57% of people liked that generally, that idea. Okay, and this will be the last one because this is, I think, the most interesting one, which is a market that has local produce that I or my family wanted. That would encourage me to buy local food. So this number is, what is that, 80? Yeah, 81, almost 82% of people would participate in this. And so let me explain what this means. So we're all familiar with grocery stores, right? And so is everybody else. And the thing that they're imagining is a local food grocery store, I think, if I read this right. A market that had everything that I wanted. I still get to make the choice that I want, but I get to do it on my time, the way that I want, the time that I want, how I want to do it. So like, to me, this is saying that what people want is they want convenience and they want choice. And so the thing that we've provided in the past, which is these farm share boxes where we get to decide everything they get, probably doesn't work for a large section of people. And that's probably part of our problem. Okay, so summary of findings, and we'll wrap it up here. But the thing that I think is most interesting is like people want to eat local food, but they aren't. There's some barrier. And we've identified some of them through this examination. And I think that like the top thing that people identify, but in different kind of ways, in different ways of saying it, is that time and convenience is one of the biggest factors for them. They weren't saying it was just about cost. They were saying it was about other things, time and convenience and being able to actually make it happen. So time and convenience saving measures are probably the biggest issue. However, if we ask people to design to design some new system, the thing that people wanted the most, they didn't say time and convenience necessarily. The thing they said was they wanted more choice and more options. They want to be able to make the choices themselves. Anyway, that's this part of the presentation. So thank you all.